Hello, Jared. Welcome back.
What's up, Rob?
Yeah. so today we're going to be doing a meet recap. You just competed this past weekend, and it'll be fun for people to hear because I believe that you're going to have mixed emotions. Like there's going to be things that you liked and things you didn't like. However, you hit all PRs and you hit like a 9.5 times your body weight total. So,
We're
so
getting there.
yeah, so I think it'll be fun for people to see. You can have ridiculous, amazing performance, but there's still almost always that drive to make those little improvements. Yeah.
Yeah, can always get better.
Yes. So if people want to, if they haven't checked it out before, they can check out our first podcast together, which was podcast 2063. And that one, we introduce you. We talk about your business function reforged. So you're a physical therapist and a personal trainer, and you're amazing at both.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yes.
that. It means a
Yes.
lot coming from you.
Oh well, thank you very much. But I love. We talked about last time how physical therapist who actually does lift weights, how much more impactful that is when you're an athlete who lifts weights looking for help from a physical therapist.
Yeah, I tell everybody it's always important to go see somebody that actually understands what you do, you know?
Yeah, big time. And it's interesting. Whenever I was doing my nutrition degree, they one of our teachers she's probably like 400 pounds. And it was interesting to hear the class because some people were like, oh, wow, she's position of authority. She has this great background. She's a ton of knowledge, and they really valued her knowledge. And then there were people that dismissed her immediately because she was overweight. And it's like, well, you're a nutritionist. Shouldn't you like look better? and there's value in. I'll speak for myself. So I won't speak for others, but I'll speak for myself. Is as a personal trainer, as somebody who does help people in the physical realm, I would perceive my aesthetics and my abilities to be important in the way in which I would know how to relate to clients. So I do think it's huge to have a physical therapist that also does lift weights and is in the mix of it all.
Yeah. No, I agree 100% with that. I mean, it'd be like if you're a runner and you go see a therapist who doesn't know anything about running, like
Yeah.
they're just going to be like, yeah, stop running. And it's,
Yes.
like, okay, but probably there's better options.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's always a difference. Like they're going to regurgitate what they know from a book, but they can't add anything that they know from actual real world, experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what also kind of going off this aesthetic thing, I think this was kind of funny. So at the meet this weekend, I had 4 different people come up to me and ask me if I was a runner. I haven't gotten that before. Yep.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, they were like, "Are you a runner? How much do you run?" And I was like, I don't. And they were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you're just really lean." And I was like, "Thanks. I think I just work really hard, but I'll
Yeah.
take it, I guess."
Yeah. You are you're incredibly lean. I've poked at you before to try to get you to do like an aesthetic competition.
Nope,
Yeah.
not for me, man.
Yeah, I'm stopped. I won't poke anymore. But as like I coach people for that too, and it's like, oh my gosh, he's just standing there with a physique that could get a pro card. And it's like, so, but I understand it's everybody has their own preference for what they do or don't do and what they like and don't like. But you do have a great physique, so I'm not surprised if people are mentioning your physique. Yeah.
Yeah, I got told that I had a dump truck and that I was a runner.
Nice. Well done.
I was like, the dump truck? Thank you. I agree with that.
The runner can feel insulting because sometimes we can associate runners with like not having good muscle mass or being soft. But there are sprinters, for example, who are usually shredded and look great. So we'll assume they meant the sprinter component of running, not the long distance.
Well, I mean, I'm sure compared to like other powerlifters, I do look like a distance runner because I mean, I'm kind of skinny. So
Well, you weighed in, like this meet, you weighed in at 156, correct? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But typically we've been competing at 148, which might not sound like a difference to people, but you have to usually cut excessive water and do some work to get to 148.
Yeah, it's usually like a 5-pound water cut for me, I'd say. This is the first time I've actually like been able to put on mass pretty well because it's been since December. since we competed last. So I had
Yeah.
7 months of where I've just been really trying to push calories and protein and just put on like
Mhm.
good lean muscle tissue. I mean, so when we first started working together, I uh, like I weighed about the same, but my body's changed a lot. And I've always been like kind of lean, but it's really interesting like looking at pictures of myself then and looking at pictures of myself now
Yeah.
and just seeing like how my body has changed to have been like the same weight literally up until recently.
Yeah. It's pretty fun because the way in which we train, uh, I don't use a lot of muscle building aspects in your programming because we never really wanted your weight. We always were trying to stay at the top of 148. So we wanted you to get stronger. We wanted to build muscle in the right places, but we couldn't just pack on, 10, 15 pounds of muscle and there'd be no way in the world we'd make 148. So it's interesting that in a program designed intentionally for you not to gain size, which that actually exists, there can be lifting programs that make you stronger but don't make you any bigger. But it's fun for you to be able to see that compositional change, which is exactly what we would have wanted to happen. Is how can we fill out, the 148 frame, and that's been fun to see that.
Yeah, I think my body just got to a point where it's like, okay, things are getting heavy, time to get a little bigger.
Yeah, yeah, and then we started adding more like quad growth development. I
Yeah.
started adding more like tricep and some chest base work. So I did start pushing more because you and I talked and we kind of said, hey, are we okay moving up a class? Are we okay adding some weight? And we said, why not? Like let's give it a shot to see if we can really get to that 10 times total and really push some things. I believe the adding of the weight. Well, it's clear that it's helped already because you hit meet PRs everywhere. Now, in relative to the weight gain, we are going to want more, but it's definitely starting in the right direction.
Yeah, and I mean, it was like the first meet I've done without really any type of like cut to like hard water cut or anything. It was just like a really soft, like just get a little bit of water out before weigh-ins to get a better dots kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
didn't feel like I wasn't dying, because I was
Yes.
like on a water cut or something crazy. So
Yeah. It's nice to show up at a meet and feel um, as much as you would want to, kind of feel like a regular training day. Like you feel good, not feeling like, like I don't know how to word it is because when you refeed correctly and you do all the water cut, typically you're going to show up to the meet and you're going to feel okay, but you get a couple heavy lifts in and it starts to like fatigue pretty quick. So it would have been nice to have a meet where maybe that didn't hit so hard so quickly.
yeah, and we had one last year where I did really well with
Yeah.
148. That's when I got the 502.9 dot
Yeah.
score.
That was the one.
Was
Was
good.
that the one where Meredith and I came?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
9
was a
for
freaking
9.
awesome day.
Yeah, that was a good day.
Yeah. Yeah. So real quick, for the listeners, viewers, I'll run through kind of how the meet went, and then you and I can do what we normally do and talk about it. So you weighed in at 71 kilograms, 156. We ended up getting a total of 1482 in pounds. So that would be a total meet PR. It's 9.5 times your body weight. It's a 500.25 dots if I use their calculator correctly. So we were able to hit the PR, but like we said, due to the weight gain, it didn't really give us like a dots PR. But we still moved some big weights. So we ended up in squats. We opened at 474. Did great there. Obviously you destroyed that. Then we did a 501, and you achieved your first 500-pound plus like meat squat.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty badass. I like that. And then we'll talk more about the thirds, but the third attempt we went for 512. We missed it. And then bench, we did a 330. That looked great. 341 looked great. And then the 352, which in my mind was kind of like the goal for bench. In squat, my goal was to secure the 500 because I knew if we benched our best and deadlifted our best, that would put us over the 1500 mark and we would have got a good dots. So in my mind, I'm like, if we hit the 500 squat, anything above that is great, but at least that's our kind of marker.
Mhm.
And then bench, I was hoping the 352 would be our marker, but we missed that top one, but we got the 340. And then deadlift, 606 was like you could have done it with one leg, one arm.
That's what it felt like. I didn't even realize it.
Oh,
It was funny. I was like, "How did that move?" I had to ask somebody because I didn't like
yeah,
feel it come off the ground. Like it just, I pulled the slack and then it just came up. I was like, "Oh,
it
cool."
was stupid. It's like it looked like they forgot to put a red plate on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It looked good. And then you went to 340, smoked that. That was actually still great. And then we went for the 300 kilogram, which is 660, and man, just like inch or two away from that one.
Yeah, I should have had that one. And I know
Yeah.
we'll talk about all these, but yeah, I should have had that one.
Yeah, but well, that's how the meet went. So we got our second attempts on everything, which were all PRs, and were numbers that we've hit in training confidently, comfortably many times.
Yeah.
And then on the third attempts, um, I don't like using the word reaching because we were going for weights that are fully within your capacity, but and we'll talk about this right now. Essentially, is we just missed them for a few little things here or there. So, do you want to start with squat and kind of give your thoughts on how everything went?
Yeah, sure. So squats, warm ups felt good. Like everything was moving good. So the interesting part, this is my first time ever lifting in the afternoon. We started
Yeah.
at 2 p.m. So that was actually kind of nice. I got to wake up in the morning and like drink some coffee and have some breakfast and like kind of settle for a little bit before lifting. So that was cool. But so yeah, 474 moved good. I ended up getting a red light on one of the sides for depth.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that like, that was just her opinion. That's fine. I still, the lift passed. It was good. But I get in my head a little bit about that when I see like the two judges look at each other and like the one looks at the other one and I'm like, oh crap. Are they like saying I just kind of think about it. So when I went for 501, if you watch the video, like I dunked it. Like I sat on the floor and stood back up. I was like, I am not leaving any question with this one. And, so dunked the 501, and then when I went for 512, I tried to do the same thing, and I felt myself coming out of the bottom get pitched forward a little bit, and I just couldn't save it, and I should have had the weight. Like it didn't feel heavy on my back.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I walked out, I was like, even when I stepped out, I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'm gonna get this one. And I went down, and when I went to come back up, I just felt myself pitch a little bit, and I was like, uh-oh, this is going to be a grinder. And then I felt a little bit of downward motion, and then they just took it. So,
yeah. And that's to jump in there, and we can keep going back and forth. The first one destroyed it. And from this is going to be interesting because I've done powerlifting meets myself. So there's a lifter perspective and a coaching perspective. Typically with openers, we're attempting a weight for a single that's usually sub-maximal for a single. You probably, could easily do it for 3. So if depth isn't 100% there on the first attempt, as a coach, I have no concern. It adjusts nothing. I don't make any changes, do anything different, because I know we're about to make, in your case, like 25-pound jump, and the 25 extra pounds is going to push you down a bit more. So usually from a coaching perspective, if I see one red light, I'm very dismissive. I could care less, and I just kind of keep doing what my plan is. Now, from the lifter's perspective, 100% understand. You see one red light, and you're like, well, damn, if I do the next one and I get 2 reds, I'm just going to exhaust myself, and I'm that much closer to bombing out of the meet. So there does start to be this like nervousness in your head. But that's essentially what happened is what I saw in the videos. The first attempt smoked, no problem. The 501, you buried it. And that's not like a bad thing, but what would be the negative consequence is we end up going an inch or two lower than we needed to. We stretch the tissues in that tension, that damage a little bit more than we need to, and it can take us out of that like best case position. And this one way of thinking of it is like if you're an inch too high in powerlifting, it makes a difference because you missed the lift. You get red lights. But if you're an inch too low, that can have consequences because now you've exerted that little extra energy that maybe wasn't necessary, and then you have that little less energy for that third one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was on me to try to dunk the third one too. Like I knew I dunked the second one,
No, you
and I
killed it.
was like, "Well, I'll get this one. I'm gonna leave no question." Because I wasn't like upset. Like after I knew I was gonna get the 501. I could just
Yeah,
feel like it wasn't gonna be a problem. And so when I had 512, I was like, "Oh, it's just like adding a five on either side. I'll do the same thing." And
yeah.
I just didn't stay tight enough in the bottom and got pitched forward, and that was it.
Yeah, and like, it's one of the things I liked in the video when I saw that I took note of that I was like, oh, this is good to see, is in nowhere in your body did anything shift, bend, torque, twist. It's like you took your perfect body and then just tilted it a bit. But like your lower back didn't bend, the shoulders didn't round, the head didn't cave, like nothing moved out of position. So that was really good to see. And it lets us know that you're right, basically in the sense that you had the strength for it, because nothing in the supporting structure, nothing in the stabilization to like faulted or moved or failed. It just looked like you went down, came up, and just kind of stalled halfway up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It could have been an issue too, and I haven't watched it back enough. But I might have like plopped, for lack of a better word, kind of to like try to dunk it, like almost like bounce. And usually, if I try to bounce at a heavy weight, I'm gonna tip.
It's going to have that forward tilt, like it has that kick.
Mm-hmm.
When we lower, then it's like a release. Yep. And it's in that release that the bar like shoves you forward coming out of it.
Yeah, I'm very glute dominant, so I'm gonna try to almost good morning it if I try to bounce it. So
yeah, that's where your body's going to default to, is essentially trying to just good morning the weight.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which is how I used to squat, which isn't great, but
yeah, which apparently isn't the way you're supposed to. But made you for a hell of a strong back, that's for sure. Yeah. So that is the same thing I saw in the squat. Is like my notes when I was watching the videos was positioning and everything looked wonderful. It just looked like maybe we got a little bit into our toes, and if we have any positional variance whatsoever, when we do that again, you just fix that little positional thing and you'll smoke it. But then also what we can add is just more quad strength.
Yep.
Because if we get the quads stronger, they're going to have more fight if you do get forward. And if you get the quad stronger, the torso position doesn't have as much of a desire to change on the descent versus the ascent. So you've seen in like some posts and stuff, and we've talked about it in training, is if a person's coming down and they hinge into like this position at the bottom, as they come up, we want them to just reverse that. What you don't want to see is as they come up, the tilt like increases to the floor and then they start coming up.
Yeah.
So the quad strength, like more quad strength, helps just reinforce that. So you did great. I just think doing great again and with a little bit stronger quads will help.
Yeah, 100%. For people that don't know, like I'm not built to squat, so like I have very long
good point.
femurs and a very short torso. So no matter what, if I high bar, you'll even see it if I front squat. Like I'm more pitched forward than someone who would have like short femurs and a longer torso, just to keep the bar over the middle of my foot. So it is normal for me to be like more hinged forward than normal, but it also means that generally speaking, people built like me, like the quads are probably going to be their most limiting factor in a squat a lot of times, just because people built like me are usually going to be more like hip dominant on a squat because you're just forced into that position. So building my quads has been a project that Rob and I have been working on very successfully, but it's helped my squat tremendously.
Yeah, and to be squatting, keep it in perspective, squatting 501 at 156 is, I would say you don't have any weaknesses. There are just things we want to get even stronger.
Yeah, you have a positive. There's weaknesses, and we're going to get stronger.
Yeah, I'm the coach, so I'm like the positive support. But I'm the positive voice in your head, while you're probably the more aggressive voice. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. But squats overall, like in training, looking forward, we have from now until November. So it's like the end of July, correct? Yeah, it's the end of July right now. So we have August, September, and then October. But as you get close to a meet, you really aren't going to work on building anything. You're just working on refining what you have. So we're going to have a good, probably like 8 weeks where we can still push the quads some. So I would like to hear your thoughts, but that's going to be one of my focuses for squats is just continuing to try to build the quads.
Yeah, I think building my quads. And the other thing I wanted to talk, like, so just position. I don't know if like pause squats would be the best move here or what, but just really making sure I secure that position in the bottom and like keep that strength out of the hole. I think that's like between muscle wise, like my quads, and then position wise, just like coming out of the hole. I think those are my two biggest weaknesses right now that I think could help me towards, a monster squat.
Yeah, and we can use some like a technique Boris Shako used with his athletes, and it was in his powerlifting book, is controlled. It's like slow tempo eccentrics, and you can extend the pause or you can have no pause. So, for example, just to make it simple, let's say a person usually goes down and up at like a 1, 2, 1, 2 count. So on the way down, we can extend it to be like 1, 2, 3. Then you can hold the pause, 1, 2, and then drive up. But what he liked to do was, let's say you did a 3 count eccentric, a 3 count pause. He might do that for a week or a block, and like he had different strategies. But it would be 3 and 3. So 3 count eccentric, 3 count pause. Then they would go to a 3 count eccentric, 2 count pause, 3 count eccentric, 1 count pause, then a 3 count eccentric, no pause. And so he liked using the eccentric as the positional awareness as you're moving, rather than you just drop to a pause, hold the pause, figure out where the hell you're at, fix it, and then come up. So I'll see that in like newer, like less experienced lifters is when sometimes when we do regular paused squats, they'll come down, be out of position, gain awareness enough to know to fix it, and then stand up, but they don't learn how to fix it before they get there. So it's almost like they get there, then they learn they're out of position. It's like, well, that's too late.
Yeah.
So I like Shako's method. So we'll use that because you're an advanced lifter, you're going to understand how to fine tune those nuances, and that was a technique he used with his lifters. So we can definitely play with that. Is play with those slow eccentrics as a way to control position. So at the bottom, you're already in position. Yeah. Now with that, that's going to decrease our weight load. So that's going to, like, no matter what we do, even if we stay low bar, if you slow the squat down, you're going to decrease weight load. So we'll then come back with accessories and make sure we still get some kind of quad overload. And your gym, Union Fitness, they have that pit shark. Yep. So we can use some narrow stance work on the pit shark to build up the quads.
Cool. Yeah, I'm down for whatever.
Awesome. There's a narrow stance, heels elevated variation of a squat on a pit shark that'll like chew up the quads. So
whatever makes them bigger, I'm cool with it.
Awesome. Yes. So that's our plan for squats. Let's move on to bench. What were your thoughts on bench?
So bench was going pretty good. So I smoked at 330, and then I was like running numbers in my head the whole time. So like based on not getting the 512, I was like, okay, if I can hit 340, I only have to pull like a 660 to get the 1500, which would secure I think it was like a 510 dots.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's get to 340 because I know I can pull 660. So I hit the 340 and it moved really well. So I was like, shoot, let's go 352. This should be here. I've hit 350 like 5 or 6 times in training now.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I just got stuck. I don't know if I like came off my chest weird. The video is hard to see like angle wise, kind of what went wrong. I know I've had some issues coming off my chest at a bad angle off and on. Like if I in the gym and training and I hit 335 and it moves a lot slower than normal, that usually means that I either like flared my elbows or drove back to my face too quickly, like off my chest, and then I'll it kind of gets at that stuck point here. So like my bar path really matters for that. But I didn't feel like it was like a strength issue potentially. Like
It was not. It was not.
I feel like I was just like in a bad pressing, like where I got stuck, I feel like that was my own fault coming off my chest.
That's actually the note I have is not that it was your own fault, but that's
it is. I'm the one lifting.
it's like one of those things. Like I understand what you mean, but at the same time, is it's not like you chose. Here's the best pathway, but I'm going to use this one instead. So it's not like you made a choice to do something different.
Yeah.
But what I look for in your bench is the first thing I look for is as the bar is coming down, does your body negatively shift horizontally down the bench?
Which I do that sometimes too.
Yeah, and that was that's something we addressed. I forget like when in our training, but at one point we worked on that quite a bit, and then like you've just been drilling it like no problems. So that's like leg pressure, leg extension kind of force, and it looked perfect. I stopped the video. I like did hyper stops every 10th of a second because this little app I have allows me to do that. And there was no shoulder shift. There was no body shift. So I know it wasn't that. And then the touch point on the chest was spot on. That wasn't off. So what I looked at and what I would deem as the thing that may have been it is when we came off the chest, we went straight up until you hit your wall, and it's almost like you went straight up like 3 or 4 inches, where typically we would have went up about 1 inch and started drifting already. So we went up and then we just kept trying to go straight up, which takes away like our position. Typically in your bench is you'll come off your chest an inch or two and then start towards the face. So that way you can kind of flare the elbows out a little bit, get a little more rotation into the shoulder, get the full outside of the pec, get the tricep lock out. And it kind of helps you better use your shoulder joint. When you look at really elite level powerlifters, which you are, their bar path on a bench press is almost like a
J.
Like an arch. Yeah, like a J, an upside down J, or like an archway. You would just take away half the archway. So if you're walking through an archway in a wall, in a door, it's like you take away half of it. So you went down and then went up, but instead of coming up and back, we just kind of fought to go straight.
Yeah.
And that stalled out because your triceps aren't going to be able to lock out 352 by themselves.
Well, we got to get them there then.
That's the so that's what I have as the note is now in all these things, squat, bench, deadlift, there's going to be a degree of fatigue is going to be a factor, especially as you lead into bench and deadlift, because typically we wouldn't have benched 2 or 3 hours directly after squat max. So in training, we knew that we hit 350 5-6 times, like you've crushed it, but we've never hit 350 2 or 3 hours after squat. So there's some reasonable components that like external rotational fatigue, chest stretch, all this stuff that could have factored in some degree. But that is my takeaway on it, is that we drove off the chest and we would have needed to come back to the face faster, but for some reason the body subconsciously didn't trust that, or who knows what.
Yep, missed it. Shouldn't have, but I did.
Yeah. So on that one, I don't think in like the notes for like what I want to work on with you, absolutely nothing special. It's literally just keep doing everything we're doing, because that bar path change, like if you did come directly up and we would have come back towards the face, if we should have come back to the face a little quicker, that'll happen next time. So I think if you would have given you that bench in those conditions, say 5 times, I bet you would have hit it 3 or 4 out of 5.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Next time we'll get it.
Yeah. So I don't have any magical notes on bench. Just keep doing everything we're doing. And then one thing I did want to touch with you on is a couple, like a month plus ago, and you can better clarify the time frame, you went and did some lifts in front of Ed Cohen.
Oh, yeah. That was an awesome experience. If anybody listening ever has a chance to go to one of his seminars and just listen to him, talk and learn from him, I highly recommend it. He's the greatest powerlifter of all time. We all know that. But he is also just a wealth of knowledge. like I've never met the guy. I never know what to expect when I go to anything like
Yeah.
seminar wise from people. And it was incredible to see him just watch somebody move one time and then just have the simplest, like one sentence, like, hey, do this thing that anybody could understand.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do it and it cleans them right up. It was really fun to watch.
That's awesome.
But for me, so on bench press, the first thing he told me was, well, he called me, are we allowed to swear on here?
Yeah, except for the F word, which I know you
Okay.
don't say anyhow.
Yeah, no, he didn't say that, but he called me a little bitch. So he said, you got to stop being a little bitch under the weight. He said, you're just pretending to struggle and you're doing this. He goes, you're not tight. You're not trying to press it. And he goes, you want to know what tightness is? And then he like pushes me. He goes, that's not it. And he goes, lock in. And then, yeah. So he made me attempt. So I missed 350 in front of Ed and he made me attempt it again. And he goes, this time you have to attack the weight, like be serious about it or don't get under it at all.
Yeah.
And I got it. Like,
yeah,
it was my first 350 press. So we talked about actually being tight and actually like bringing it down with tightness and then attacking the weight, not being hesitant with it. And then he also helped me a little bit with leg drive. I'm up on my toes, so I arch pretty hard when I bench press, and I'm on my toes. And so he was cueing me that instead of maybe trying to push the floor away, think about like pressing my heels into the floor a little more, to engage my quads. And so that was a helpful cue, because I think sometimes what happens with me is I'm so arched and loaded up that I think I'm pushing the floor with my quads, but I end up just like kind of contracting my glutes under heavy weights and my butt comes up a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm not actually getting leg drive into the bar. I'm just getting a hip lift and I think I'm helping myself.
Yeah.
So that was another helpful cue that he worked on with me. But
yeah, I wanted to ask, how do you think you implemented his intentionality, like his intensity cue in the meet?
So really it's just going and attacking the weights. I mean, I don't really know. It's one thing when you have the greatest powerlifter of all time standing there in front of you telling you that you're just, being a little bitch about attacking weights. And you're like, okay, yeah. And you don't want to do that again.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I make sure that especially as it starts to get heavier, I leave no doubt that I'm going to try to smoke something. Like I'm going to drive it as hard as I can. The hard part for me is and this didn't take long to figure out, but just not be overly aggressive to where I'm losing position, like still coming down, like almost like rowing that bar to my chest, keeping as tight as possible, and then just driving it with everything I have. So, I still picture Ed in my head every time I go to, because it was funny. It was fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's cool. I did want to touch on that because that's a awesome life experience. And I was just curious to see like how you felt about that at the meet.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
cool.
I was picturing Ed. I was like, I'm not going to miss this one. I missed it, but
but hey, it's it's one of those things. At least it channeled you. It gave you a better opportunity to give it a try.
Yeah, 100%.
Then on deadlifts, what's your take on deadlifts? Like, what were your thoughts?
So, you never know how you're going to feel on deadlifts until you start warming up, just because you've already done 2 lifts, real heavy lifts through that day. So warm-ups felt real good. Like they just popped right off the floor and I was like, oh, nice. Yeah. So I did, what were my warm-ups? It was like up to 4 red plates and a yellow. So like 545 or something like that.
Yeah.
Was my last warm-up I think I took. So I think I took like 496, 545, and 545 came off the floor just with the slack pull, which like my slack pull hasn't been good recently. I've been really struggling with my position. And then for some reason at the meet, like it just came up. I was like, sweet. So 606 flew off the ground. Like we already talked about that. Picked it right up. And when I hit that, I was like, okay, I feel like I could pull 700 pounds today.
Yeah.
So I was like, don't need to do anything crazy. Let's just solidify the total and we'll be good. So I put 640 on next, just so I wasn't making like a 60-pound jump right away. Smoked that. That felt fine. Like that was an easy lift.
It was easy.
Yeah. And so I was like, I know I have 660. So I threw it in and I stepped up to the bar, and I don't know what happened totally. I think I probably could have done a better job from the start, just being a little bit tighter. I think I was probably a little loose, but I got the wobbles. And the wobbles got me. So when I I started getting it up off the floor, and my legs started shaking a little bit, and I couldn't get my knees through. Like, so, on a normal sumo deadlift, you go like knees, hips, like kind of in that sequence real quick.
Yeah.
I couldn't get my knees through, and I tried at one point, and I ended up like getting a little uneven, and the bar dumped forward a little bit on me, and that's when I lost it.
Yeah.
So yeah, unfortunately I didn't get the 660, although it was there. I should have had that lift. That shouldn't have been an issue.
Well, yeah, like it's interesting. Like hindsight's always, well, it's not always 2020, that's for sure. But you have a better chance of 2020 in hindsight. Looking at the videos, the opener, the 606, like we said, it was nothing. Like zero difficulty, zero taking away from the body. It would have done nothing to take away from your top end lift. And then the 640, it moved very well, but it was heavy enough that it would have to have counted towards some of your top end. So like if you had, on this day, you had 10 units of deadlift strength, the 606 would have taken 0 units away. The 640 took a few units away, but not enough that I would have thought either that 660 would have been a problem. Based on how the 640 moved, I would have assumed the 660 was just like an afterthought.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's like in my head. I was like, okay, I know I'm good for like 680 right now. Like after 640, I was like, oh, I could probably put another 40 pounds on there right now and not like think twice about it. So we'll get 660, solidify the 1500 total, 510 dots, like what, like kind of was minimum in my head of what I wanted to do that day.
Yeah.
And then just walk away with it that way. I missed it.
Yeah, I was genuinely surprised. And then now, like for the future discussion, I have a question for you. Is what are your thoughts on, since the 606 is becoming such a warm up? Given the example again, let's play this little game because I think there's stuff to learn from this. Is given the example again, I probably would have we would have talked, and I think we would have probably bumped your opener up to say just like 620. So that way you could have went right to 660. Mm-hmm. I think if you did your 660 second, you would have destroyed it, smoked it. There would have been no problem.
Yeah.
So that's the challenging part, is you don't know any of that until after you do it. But I think for the meets coming forward, I think you're strong enough. You can make 660 your second attempt.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's just going to be, I think I need to still do work on my bottom position a little more, like just on the bar. I think that's where I tend to like lose lift. So it's not like I can smoke a lift and I can make it look like the hardest grind of my life at the same weight. And it all comes down to how well I can wedge into the bar and get the slack out of the bar. And I think I was lacking a little bit on my last one there, which cost me, because of the fatigue you talked about, cost me a little bit with my positioning, and then getting a little wobbly because I'm fatigued and it's heavy, and then just not being able to complete the lift. Yeah. So I don't know if working on like having even a secondary deadlift day a little bit and doing like some speed work, even just to work on like some tension at the bottom or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll come back to that in 1 second. But looking at that third attempt at 660, if we had to nitpick, if we had to guesstimate, I would say that there possibly could have been some increase in the pinch of the lats and the lift of the chest, just a smidge. And what we've seen in the past that would get you in trouble, where you said it looks like you can smoke a weight, then the next attempt, all of a sudden it looks like the hardest thing in the world, is whenever we would pull on the bar, like pull slack, and like, so this is the bar, this is your body. So as you would pull up on the bar, we want the body and the hips to drive almost like down and under the bar. Mm-hmm. So on the third one, it looked like we pulled on the bar, but the hips stayed back. Mm-hmm. So we tensioned on the bar, but the hips didn't scoot into the bar at all. So then we just pressed straight up, and it created that distance between the bar and the hip, just a smidge more than we would ever be used to. And I think those two things, the pinch of the lats and the chest being a little more upright could have helped. And then as we pulled on the slack, bringing the hips into the bar a little bit could have helped. But at the same time, I wouldn't have thought any of that stuff until after you did it, because it moved. The 640 moved so well. I wouldn't have coached you to do anything different. So I wouldn't have said, hey, make sure you drive your hips closer. I'd have just been like, dude, that looked great. Don't change anything.
Yeah, that's how I felt. I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to go do the same thing. And then I just didn't do the same thing.
Yeah. So then coming back to training adjustments, this is something like you and I consider your programming when we do it together is a joint effort. Like we're combining two minds to make, one awesome outcome. Is one of the thoughts I have in regards to like speed deadlifts for you is you're so damn strong that in order to get a weight that you would feel, I don't know what the proper terminology is, so I'm just going to use a term, where you're a weight that you're penalized if you don't get in perfect technique, to where therefore it makes it to where you have to be hyper aware of your position, and then that would translate to helping us at a meet. That weight has to be 600 plus.
What if it, just throwing ideas out though, but what if it was like something like a snatch grip, just conventional snatch grip deadlift? Because that forces you to really lock your lats in and keep everything kind of locked in there.
We could do so conventional stance, do snatch grip deadlifts, and probably want to do that maybe slightly elevated, just to mimic the same torso position that you have in your sumo. So if your sumo is this torso position and we are trying to learn how to lock this in, but conventional stance due to your femur length makes your torso this, then we would want to elevate the bar to get your torso back up to matching the sumo. Yes, we could definitely do that. I think we can play with that. And then what that's going to do is that's going to wear and tear a little bit on the lower back. So we would modify.
8 weeks to mess with that, so it doesn't matter.
So I would make sure that on our eccentric loading for the squat training that we're allowing RPE intensity allowance to equate for the effort that the deadlift will take. So we're not going to go full send on the eccentric squats because we would need to save some recovery for those conventional deadlifts. So the conventional deadlifts, so those who don't know, which is everybody other than you and I, we typically have been deadlifting heavy right after squats. Yeah. And my thoughts on that was it exhausted your legs. It exhausted your posterior chain spinal erectors. So that way on deadlifts, you were forced to be super freaking crisp, even at say 80, 90% weights, because you were 10, 20% more tired from the squatting. So in my opinion, I think that worked well because you went to the meet and you felt like freaking Superman when you got into deadlifts because they weren't directly after squats and stuff. So would you want to do the snatch grip conventional deadlifts after squats or on their own day?
So I was here's some thoughts that I had. So we're competing again in November 8th is the next meet. So we have, what's that, ballpark 16 weeks? I didn't actually count.
It'd be August, September, October, and then a week of November. So you have 13?
13? Okay.
And I don't know. I'm just making that up as I go, but I think it's around 13. You can count it out if you have your calendar.
I do somewhere. Where is it in my phone? Gotta find. There it is. So we got, what's this week? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 weeks.
Okay.
I compete on Friday the 8th. So 14 weeks out. So I was thinking, I don't know, maybe being a little aggressive in kind of the build up, even if we do more more squatting, more deadlifting kind of overall, or added, however we want to do it. But we have 14 weeks. I think in my head, like you said, my second attempts, I can see being openers for this upcoming meet because they all moved really well. And I think we can get a lot stronger before we get to that point. So I don't know how we want to structure it, but I would be willing to do, because I do want to keep sumo. I don't do well if I step away from pulling sumo. and then have to come back to it. The position just, I feel like I'm relearning position for 4 weeks.
Yeah, especially right now if we're working on trying to get our position. Yeah.
Right. So I need to keep that in, but if we want to do the conventional sumo stuff, it can be right after, or not conventional sumo, conventional snatch grip. It can be right after I do my sumo pulls, or it can be on its own day, whatever you think is best there. I'm fine with whatever.
Okay. Yeah. We can definitely, I think what we can do is let's play with having that on its own day.
Okay.
So we'll separate our squat and deadlift. And typically the reason why I liked having them paired together is at your strength level, the connective tissue stress is very high when you do squat and deadlift. To do them together, it decreases the volume we need of each. And then we only get one major day a week that your connective tissue, squat related and deadlift related, are just wrecked. So it's like you have this huge hole of stress, and then you have 7 days, well, 6 because you're repeating the 7th. You have 6 days to build up out of that. When we separate squat and deadlifts, the squats are going to take a big hit on connective tissue, and then only 2 or 3 days later, you're going to deadlift, and that's going to take a big hit on connective tissue. Then only 2 or 3 days later, you go back to squat. So when we separate it, where people will get in trouble at your strength level is their muscular strength is going to surpass their connective tissue recovery. So what ends up happening is you're strong enough to move some crazy heavy weights, but within 4 or 5, 6 weeks, all of a sudden the bursitis in the hip comes up, or something weird in my back is starting to bug me, and it's because the muscles are recovering every 3 to 5 days, but the connective tissue doesn't recover every 3 to 5 days. So what we'll do is we'll separate them so we can get some good performance out of each. But what I would look for as the coach, like telling the lifter, is on squat day, you're going to feel like there was a little bit left that you could have done. On deadlift day, there's going to feel like there was a little bit left you could have done. And the benefit there is you're digging the hole to maybe like an 8 out of 10 each time rather than a 10 out of 10. And that's going to allow each day to have a good heavy weight load, but not that taxing amount of connective tissue stress that can't recover in time for the next workout.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it's still going to feel intense because I can still pre-exhaust you. Like if I wanted to be a horrible, mean jerk, I won't do this to you, but just to give examples, is you could do like GHD raises, and then we could do like pit shark RDLs, and then we would go into the snatch grip deadlifts. And you would be destroyed because we did 2 pre-exhausting movements on the glutes and the spinal erectors. There's no way you would be able to do as much weight load on those snatch grip conventional deadlifts because of the pre-exhaust. And the benefit of that, though, is you used less weight load on the main lift, that snatch grip conventional. So there's less weight load, meaning there's less stress on the connective tissue, but the weight load that you are using feels full intensity, full maximal effort, so you actually still develop full strength. So we can play with some degree of pre-exhaust if we feel like we want to protect the connective tissue. So,
okay, we can play with whatever. I think my hesitation sometimes with pre-exhaust before deadlifts is just I don't want to be overloading like my back to a point. Like if my hamstrings or glutes or anything are too tired, I don't want to end up just having to compensate, with my erectors completely. If the goal is to really work on like wedging and just that strength off the floor and everything.
Yeah. So I think what we'll do is we'll start this. We'll do the conventional stance, snatch grip deadlifts. We'll do them fresh. And let's do them before we do sumo.
Okay.
So that way you can feel the challenge of that position and then directly into some sumo sets. So that way you can then translate, that challenge of the snatch grip into the sumo. And then I'll keep your accessories very minimal weight load, almost like body weight type stuff or explosive type drills. Because the combination of the snatch grip and the sumos is going to wear and tear quite a bit of stuff. So we'll do weighted accessories for lower body after your squats rather than after the deadlifts.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that'll protect our connective tissue. It'll protect you in the deadlift so you don't feel like you're at risk being pre-exhausted. But it helps balance the muscle development that we want with the technique development that we want with the connective tissue protection that we want.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what are your thoughts on bench? Kind of keeping things the same, or do you have any extra thoughts or anything different you want to add in?
We have 14 weeks to make that a better bench, so I'm fine with whatever. I think
Awesome.
just getting stronger and dialing it in more is always I'm fine with whatever in bench press. I think there's
Awesome.
nothing specific that I can pinpoint on myself other than I think technically I was just a little off.
I think the same because your bench has been improving. I mean, my gosh, you're squatting. I mean, you're benching 350 in training multiple times now.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is working. It's just we ran into a little weird moment, but it wasn't anything that indicated that we were weak in a specific area or we didn't have position for a certain thing. It was just like I believe if you gave yourself that attempt 5 more times, you would probably hit it more than you'd miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely in there. I've hit 350 multiple times, so
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about missing it. I'm just bummed that I missed it. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, we got, like I said, we have 14 weeks. So if we want to get back into any volume, I'm down with that or whatever we want to do.
Okay, sounds good. And then, so that's basically the notes that I had. Is I feel like you did a great job. You kicked butt, got a bunch of PRs. We missed the dots increase that we were looking for, but we learned a lot. And I think this meet proved a lot of what we're doing is working. We're just in the process of it having the full fruition that we are looking for.
Yeah, and for reference too, I mean, I went 6 for 9 and pretty much matched my best dot score on just my second attempt. So it's
it's a damn good day.
I'm stronger than I was.
Expected more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very happy for you. But I do understand also the feeling of missing a few things in the process.
Oh yeah. And I mean, that's competition too. You know, you're going to have misses and you're have 9 for 9 days. You're going to have 5 for 9 days. Like,
yeah. And even those 9 for 9, you're always going to think like, maybe I could have added a little more.
Oh, every time.
Yeah. So it's just that perfectionist nature. It's funny in the sense of people who do well in lifting, and there's a balance to it, but they tend to be perfectionists because they're always looking for that thing to improve, that next thing, that next thing, that next thing, and that drives you for years, and it drives people to continue to refine what they're doing, make success. So without that feeling of, man, maybe I could do a little better, you're probably never going to be your best.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, and I think that's the fun part about lifting too, is there's always another number, or like, oh, like this moved really well, I probably could have gotten this, like let's make that the goal. Like there's always another goal that you're kind of thinking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we're right there with the 10 times body weight total. I think that's within the wheelhouse here. So
definitely, man. I think everything we've been wanting it's 100% possible, and we're figuring out step by step how we're going to reach it. And we're actually progressing step by step. So we're going to get there. It's just continuing to put together time and experiences on our way there.
Heck yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thank you for doing the filming this and recording this, because I think it'll be very helpful for people.
Yeah. I think it's fun to see what it looks like, you know, coach and client, like the conversations that are had, and I think it makes it less intimidating for people who are thinking about getting a coach and like seeing what that looks like. And
yeah, and I know it's well, not to harp on it too long, but there's a wide degree of how coaches manage lifting and programming. Mm-hmm. And you know, some coaches you're never going to hear from them, or you get like one statement back every 2 weeks. You know, you'll submit videos for squats, and all you hear back in 2 weeks is, you know, put more weight in your heels. And it's like, oh, geez, like that's all I got for 2 weeks. You know, mm-hmm. So it's nice to see kind of the type of interaction that should be possible, should be open, should be available to the person in some capacity. But I appreciate you talking with me. I appreciate you being open with me, and I am thankful to get to be a part of your journey.
No, yeah, heck yeah. If we've made a lot of progress. Let's keep going.
Heck yeah, awesome. And then for anybody who's watching this, if you want to reach out, Jared, what is your contact information?
So you can find me. My website is functionreforge.com. You can reach me on Instagram. My business is Function Reforged, so just at Function Reforged. If you want to check out some of my lifts that I post, it's really just an account I made so I didn't have to keep sending Rob blurry videos.
Yeah.
But it's at PT, the letter N, and then powerlifting. That's the just kind of lifting page I have on Instagram there, so you can look at that as well. But yeah.
Yeah, so I'll include all that in the description. So if anybody's wants to ask you any questions, figure out what you're doing, they can listen to that podcast that we did together, which, again, real quick, was podcast 2063. And then they can always reach out for you if they're having any, like you do movement assessments, you do help with any kind of aches and pains.
Yep.
You're a great resource. So if anybody's looking for any of that stuff, I would definitely encourage them to reach out. And they, couldn't be in better hands.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, if you can shoot me an email too. It's just jared@functionreforge.com. So
perfect. That works. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for joining, and I appreciate it. And maybe before the next meet, we'll do another one of these and talk about what we expect in the upcoming meet and how we prepare for a meet.
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Okay, bye.
See ya.